We turn our attention now to lessons learned during the COVID-19 lockdown period, as analysts are advising the SME sector to use those lessons in the so-called new normal. These include innovation, pivoting and using remote working to the advantage of a business. Chief Relationship Officer from Merchant Capital, Ryan Cohen, joins us for this conversation. Ryan, thank you so much once again for your time. I think let's first unpack the lessons that were learned during the COVID-19 pandemic for the SME sector, particularly when it came to pivoting at an abrupt pace.
Good morning to me, Sam, and thanks for having me on your show. It's a very good question. So I think first and foremost, COVID was a black swan event. However, if there's one thing that I think it taught us was it's important to prepare for the unexpected. This is applicable, I think, for all businesses. However, small businesses in particular need to be mindful of this because they've simply got fewer fail-safe mechanisms. It's therefore important, I think, to scenario plan and ask questions like what if, or imagine a world where, and develop risk mitigation plans to deal with such scenarios. We all were sent home to work. And I believe that this remote working piece is here to stay. And what this looks like will vary from business to business and even department to department within a business. In our business, this is working well. And on aggregate, what we're doing is we are working 4 days in office and then 1 from home. And then I guess my recommendation in this regard would be to test and learn for your business. One of the heavy topics or important topics that came out during the COVID period was the topic around mental well-being. And I think that this over here is a top priority that's going to be on a lot of employers' agendas going forward. During COVID, I think there was a term that was coined called the Great Resignation. And I think this was born out of people leaving companies where perhaps they were paid appropriately, but they were looking for new working environments. Many of these people actually had an entrepreneurial spirit and started businesses over the period. So I think for an employer, a culture where the employee's well-being is set as a cornerstone will go a long way. And I think this is important from an output, loyalty, and overall best-in-class employee retention strategy. Some of the other things that became clear is cash is no longer king. COVID accelerated the transition to digital payments. More consumers wanted, who perhaps historically would have paid with cash, were a little bit paranoid in touching cash, and there was a lot of touch-free payment methods that were introduced. And I think it's important that as a business, you listen to the payment mechanisms that your customers would require, and as a result of that, you're able to fulfill their needs at point of sale.
And that has become crucial, Ryan, pardon me for interjecting there, for the small and medium enterprise as a sector to adopt, because it is essentially what we are likely going to be facing for the foreseeable future as new technology comes in, and fintech companies are swimming within the SME industry for opportunities.
Spot on. I think that's exactly right. And I think what started happening is, and I guess we saw it during COVID, is that you had the significant increase in online spending. And this online spend was almost, I think it was a saving grace for many businesses, retailers, restaurants, and all businesses who needed it as a lifeline when all the spending was disrupted. So I think a large portion of this shift in digital spending is here to stay. Importantly, I think as the consumer establishes a new routine where they're going to be traveling again between work and home, in-store visits are going to increase materially. So the onus now rests on the e-tailer, the online store, to create amazing shop experience. So I think a good point over here, and I think it touches on what you said earlier, is consumer habits have changed forever. I think it's essential for businesses now to have omni-channel strategies. So this is a strategy of and. So if you think about a business that historically had a brick and mortar set up exclusively now need to have an online setup too.
Yeah.
So this will give the consumer choice and more ways to buy from the SME or a business on a desired shop experience that the consumer wants to have.
I like that term, e-tailing, because it also speaks to the opportunities that exist for the SME sector to plug into as, this new normal becomes what we are going to know as the norm. How ripe is the landscape in South Africa for small businesses to enter this market and participate?
Sorry, Tumi-san, can you broke up? Can you just repeat your last question, please?
I'm asking about the conduciveness of the economic landscape in South Africa to propel this e-tailing methodology.
Yeah, so I think starting an online store is pretty simple from a cash intensity point of view, because you don't need to hold stock. You don't necessarily need to. You don't need to have a storefront. Everything is done online. However, with that comes another whole new set of skills that a business needs to, or business owner needs to develop around understanding digital marketing, understanding product market mix, understanding pricing. So I think there are a lot of similarities, but to brick and mortar. But I think there are certainly nuances around e-tailing that a new business owner would need to study and get their heads around.
Thank you so much for your time and insights. That's all we have time for with Ryan Cohen from Merchant Capital there at this hour on the Business Desk, talking to us about lessons that should be kept by the SME sector learned during the COVID-19 period.